You're listening to the Property Nomads Podcast, your one-stop shop for property, business and travel-related content, tying it all together to help guide you towards success. If you like the podcast, please share with others, subscribe and leave us a review. So get your gear together and let's get going.
Welcome to the Property Nomads Podcast, and we're answering the question today of will economies and property markets crash? If I was going to make this the quickest episode, I would just say yes, and that would be the end of the episode. But a highlight as to why I believe that is the case. So we'll go a bit more in depth. I'll hold my hands up. At the end of 2020, at the end of a tough year for most people around the globe, I held my hands up and I've said it on record that I thought that the property market would crash in 2021. At the time of recording, that's unlikely to happen. Still a few months left, but I'm going to hold my hands up at the moment and say, ooh, it looks like I was incorrect. It will happen at some point. And the reason for addressing this again now is that more and more people, not necessarily property people, more and more people are asking the question, when's it going to happen? When's there going to be a crash? What do I need to do? How do I need to prepare? These are topics that we've covered on the podcast previously, yet it feels prudent to be able to go through it again, to be able to help get ducks in the line where you can. Of course, at the time of listening to this as well, there's been some incredible changes to the commercial world with changes in classes from Class E to MA. That's creating a plethora of opportunities. So I will try not to make this sound doom and gloom, just a dose of realism, but yet bear in mind that there are also ample opportunities around us at all times. Will economies and property markets crash? Yes, is a simple answer. Yes, they will. With the amount of QE that's going in, and what I'm going to try and do is I'm putting most of the world in the same bracket here, because this is what's going on predominantly around the world. A lot of stimulus has been put in. A lot of fiat currency has been printed. In the history of fiat currencies, all of them, and there's over 600 examples, have gone to zero at some point. Fiat currencies, so the currencies that you and I know, predominantly the pound, the US dollar, etc., etc. Much older currencies that go back years, millennia. At some point, they've all gone to zero. They have all failed. There is not a successful fiat currency out there. Bear that in mind. The amount of currency that's being printed at the moment, in the UK that is billions, in the US that's trillions with these stimulus packages, and I'll do my bunny ears when I say stimulus packages. It's creating a knock-on effect, and surprise, it started to create, or already has in a lot of cases, created inflation. It's not a surprise. This is what happens when you have an influx of currency you just print and you push into the market. Inflation will rise. It's economics 101. We covered this a little while ago. Now, if you look at stock market reports, you look at everything that's going on. In the last 18 months, the world in general has been a bit of a shit show. Dealing with pandemics, dealing with, bits and bobs. The velocity of currency hasn't really been there. The production of goods and services predominantly hasn't really been there. Yet the stock market is reaching new highs, has reached new highs. It's maintaining very high numbers. How is that even possible? This is what you have to think of. It's almost like it's a house of cards. All it takes is something somewhere to blow over, and the whole thing comes crashing down. Now, I understand from a government's point of view, a macroeconomic point of view, it's a lot of how society thinks. You've got to have the trust of the people. You've got to have the belief of the people, the majority. People, if you have the belief, you're pretty much going to be doing okay. It's psychological as well. If most people are told that, the economy is doing fine, the stock market is in a great position, most people are not going to think otherwise. It's when you get to people like myself that are either a bit cynical or like to sort the wheat from the chaff, you kind of look into it a little bit. You start going down these small rabbit holes. You look at stuff and go, nah, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't quite work out. How is this stable? How is this running? If you answer those questions, you then get into some serious rabbit holes of there's a lot of shady stuff basically going on in the background, and it's the same old story as the poor get poorer, or inflation is the ultimate stealth tax after all. So poor get poorer, the middle class gets squeezed, and the elites at the top are gonna take a lot of the cream and a lot of the cash somewhere or another. Now 5-10 years ago, I'd sort of be beating the drum going, well, that's unfair and this and that and this and that. My perspective of it's changed. We all have 24 hours in a day. We can all do a lot of learning. We can all take a lot of things away from life. And, the world is a shady place. The world doesn't quite work how I think most of us think it works. There's always going to be some shady stuff going on in the background. A lot of corruption, a lot of greed, a lot of capitalism. Yeah, that is how it is. What I don't buy into is this whole totalitarianism approach now that we seem to be taking, which is not good. It's an easy vote winner for whoever's in charge, but it's really not good, and it's going to lead us into a lot of issues further on down the line. Anyway, before I start ranting, probably do that in a different episode. Let's go back to the original question: will economies and property markets crash? Yes, the property markets are certainly in the UK. You're recording double-digit growth in some areas, which is fantastic for people that have got in early. But that is not sustainable. And if you look at the history of the property market, there's normally an 18-year cycle. So it will dip down, dip back up. You get your bull market, you get your bear market, etc., etc. 18-year property cycle. There's a little article I wrote. It's in Buy to Let How to Get Started. Go and check it out. It's on Amazon. Get it from the website as well. It's an 18-year property cycle, give or take. Now, going on the last cycles, a crash should probably happen 2024, 2025. That's feasible. What I'm not going to do after embarrassing myself in December last year is sit here and make an exact prediction. I think that's foolish. But what I am 100% confident in saying is, yes, the economy will crash. Yes, the property market will crash. And as always, that is going to create a hell of a lot of opportunities moving forward. They are the times where you want to be holding cash. You want to know people with cash. You want to be ready to swoop. If things go down in value, that's when most millionaires are going to be made. That's when there's going to be some fantastic opportunities. Swoop in there with cash, sweep everything up, happy days. So yes, economies will crash. Yes, property markets will crash. There is no way at the moment that the stock market should be where it's at. The economy shouldn't really be where it's at. The property market really shouldn't be where it's at. It's been overstimulated, it's dangerous, it's not sustainable, and at some point, what goes up must come down. And the property market, the economy, is no exception. I'm not being doom and gloom, being realistic. You just have to look at the history of cycles. It will happen at some point. That being said, the caveat is that it will always create opportunities. So open your eyes to what's going on. It's going to happen at some point. When exactly, I don't know. Don't read and don't believe mainstream media. Most of it's nonsense. Happy investing as well, because there's always opportunities out there. I'm hoping that helps you. I really do. Please don't come away from this doom and gloom, and that's not the purpose of this. There will always be opportunities. You have 24 hours in a day, like most people do, like everyone does. Use that time wisely. Do study this, do study history, do study the cycles, study what's gone on, because that will normally give you a good indication of what's coming up. And there are traits that are happening that are eerily similar to things that have gone along in the past. What ultimately brings it down? That's always going to be something different. Sometimes it's something unforeseen, but it will happen at some point. All of that being said, do enjoy the travel segments that are starting on Thursday. We are going to be combining property and travel on the podcast. So the introductory episode is on Thursday. Stick around for that, because we're going to take you on an epic journey as we relive some awesome travelling that we done, and ultimately the travelling that got us into property in the first place. Until then, follow us on YouTube, like us on YouTube. Do share the podcast with as many people as you can. We aim to provide as much practical information as possible. Also, leaving a review on iTunes would be highly welcomed. We do enjoy reading them. Thank you very much for your continued support, and until next time, auf Wiedersehen.